Hello, I'm Hannah, and this is Hannah's Books. I come to you today with a special tag created by the wonderful Pat at Book Chat with Pat in celebration of the fact that she just reached 2,000 subscribers. If you don't know her channel yet, please go check it out. She has wonderful bookish conversation, a warm personality, and a sense of community and friendship that is completely infectious. Thank you very much for being one of my friends, Pat, and thanks for tagging me. Let's get on to the prompts. The first two are about joy. Number 1, name an author whose books bring you joy, or discuss a specific book that made you feel joyful. One book that always makes me feel joyful is the short little novel by Alan Bennett called The Uncommon Reader. In it, Queen Elizabeth sort of stumbles into the love of reading. It's such a lovely little book, sweet and funny, and for the last few years it's been one of the 2 books I've read on New Year's Day, and I think it will be in 2025 as well. The book itself brings me joy, but it also points out how reading, just in general, can bring all people joy. Number 2. Discuss something about booktube that you find joyful. There are, of course, so many different ways I could answer this question. Today, though, I want to choose the amazing sense of connection we make with other readers here, both other booktubers and regular viewers and commenters. Over my several years here on this platform, I've not just enjoyed your company, but I've made real friendships, real in a way I wasn't sure was even possible between people who had never met. And I've also met several booktubers in person, and I have a few more on the horizon. All these new friendships have definitely brought me joy. And that leads straight to the third prompt, discuss a book that focuses primarily on friendship. I'll mention one of the books I read in Maine last week by Orne Jewett. One of her lesser-known books is The Marsh Island, and it's recently been republished with a very interesting scholarly introduction. I plan to talk about it in quite a bit of detail in an upcoming video, but for now, let me say that this book, published in 1885, is an exploration of a kind of friendship that I'm not sure we really see discussed much during this period of literature. A friendship between an unmarried young man and an unmarried young woman. Without a long history of being friends since childhood or something like that, and by the latter part of the book, without any romantic relationship or marriage as the anticipated outcome. It's fascinating. I also want to mention one other book about friendship, one that I have not read yet, but have on my list, specifically because Pat has talked about it so glowingly, and that is the memoir Let's Take the Long Way Home by Gail Caldwell. It's the story of 2 women whose friendship deepens as they talk about everything from their struggles with alcohol to the books they read. The next prompt, number 4, is about laughter. Discuss an author or a specific book that makes you laugh. I laughed all the way through Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, read aloud by the masterful narrator Martin Jarvis. I listened to it in the car years and years ago when my son was still quite young, when my family was on a long drive. For those of you who don't know, there's a lot of humor that's related to classic Bible stories. As a secular person who nevertheless knows both the Jewish Bible and the New Testament fairly well, I found the allusions quite amusing. But my son, who really was still quite young, had not yet read any of the New Testament and didn't know much of the Old Testament, at least beyond the first 5 books. But he still adored the novel, and he read it several times over the years after we listened that time in the car. And when we did read the Bible together, years later as part of his literary education, Abe was astonished to realize how much he actually already knew. I don't think Pratchett and Gaiman intended their book to be an introduction to Scripture. The next 2 prompts are about community. Number 5 is to discuss a book where the idea of community is important. I want to name another book I first listened to as an audiobook in the car on a drive with my family, and that's the short book Seedfolk by Paul Fleishman. The book is about the founding of an urban community garden on a vacant lot that pulls together a widely disparate group of people of different ages, different primary languages, different food traditions, etc. The neighborhood where the community garden develops is a community full of immigrants. Each part of the story is told by a different narrators in the text, but also different audio narrators. And the book has an incredibly sweet and hopeful message of tolerance and joining together without seeming smarmy or artificial. I highly recommend it as an audiobook, but I read the text a few years later and loved that as well. The sixth prompt of this tag is to discuss a communal reading experience that you have had. I really loved the reading group put together by Sarah at Hardcover Hearts, reading many of the works of Elizabeth Bowen. The Voxer discussion group was very large and full of a lot of really brilliant readers. It was a joy to read and talk with everybody. Another communal reading experience I really enjoyed was a bit different. For years, I've chosen to celebrate a short version of Vlogmas based on my own cultural celebration of Hanukkah. Instead of Vlogmas, I celebrate Hannah's Bukaka for only 8 nights. Last year, I decided to choose a specific author, Willa Cather, and read several of her short novels, as well as talk about biographies of her and biographical issues her life raised. I had the great joy of reading novels with 5 different great booktubers and filmed Zoom discussions between us for 4 of those novels. I filmed all of the videos during Hanukkah, and it was a little crazy, but tremendous fun, and a fantastic way to see more into the books than I could have seen had I read them alone. I am thinking about choosing another author and doing something vaguely similar this year. We'll see. Okay, the last substantive prompt is about gratitude. Name a book in which a character demonstrates real gratitude, or name a book that left you feeling a sense of gratitude. I've mentioned how grateful I have been to the writer Margaret Renkl for giving a sense of peace at some very hard times in my life. I read much of her work aloud to David in his last few months. And I even read aloud some of the passages that meant the most to me in the moments when my son and I were sitting with him when he was unconscious and actively dying. Renkl's book, Graceland, is about her appreciation or gratitude for her native land, the South, with not only its natural beauty, but the art and music of its peoples. She's especially grateful for progressive Southerners who work hard to make communities that treat all people with respect, even in the face of the legacy of slavery and the white supremacy that has long haunted the South. Renkl herself explicitly frames this narrative around grace, something closely akin to gratitude, I think. And finally, the last prompt is to tag others to spread a sense of joy and gratitude. Pat has tagged an amazing selection of great booktubers. I encourage you to go mine her list if you're looking for channels that might be new to you. I'll add a few that I think weren't tagged. Elizabeth at Bookwins and Books, Heather Gregg, Lindy at Lindy's Magpie Reads, and Memphis Jones at Hey Dear Blog. Well, that will do it for this video. Congratulations again, Pat. You are such a force for good here on BookTube. And what a wonderful way to celebrate, too. And thank you to all of you for joining me today here on Hannah's Books and for being part of my life. See you soon.